La-dee-dee, volume down. Alrighty. Zippity freaking doodah. Alrighty then, I'll make sure somebody shows up to make sure it's actually working. Don't have to wait till a million people show up, but one would be a nice indicator that it's actually functioning. Yay, there's a person. I kind of feel compelled to make this Facebook Live thing about the ridiculous spectacle that happened on the 6th. Yay. Wait, that was 2 days ago now, wasn't it? So I'm not going to dwell too long on the things that most of you know. First of all, the one good thing I'll say is, yay, some people found the spirit of resistance, kind of, but not really, because what they were protesting is, hey, the wrong authoritarian, collectivist, psychopathic control freak is going to be dominating us, and we're really mad about that. We want our favorite authoritarian, blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of pathetic and utterly pointless. Now, as far as the facts of what actually happened, I don't even know. I mean, there's a bunch of things that make this look completely fake. Like, if they had wanted to keep them out to begin with, they totally could have. It looks like they were literally let in. I'm not going to theorize too much about the tactical advantages to them of doing that, like allowing sort of a little insurrection where they break in and break things and go rah rah rah, so they can go, oh, we're shocked at this. Oh, look how horrible this is. And does look kind of likely that some of the Trumpites and QAnon crowd were actually Antifa. The thing is, to me, the two aren't mutually exclusive. They're both psyops distractions so wouldn't surprise me at all if there were people who are both. QAnon spreads utter BS to try to make people believe in a political solution and to make them think that Trump is secretly their savior, and no, he's freaking not. And Antifa is, largely a bunch of basically government agents sent out to cause trouble that they can point at and go, oh, look at this trouble we have to respond to. So I'm not even going to particularly argue about who actually did it and who was involved and who wasn't. But the mentality, a lot of people were there, being themselves, not instigators, and they believe in it. And they went and protested because we think this election was stolen from Trump and rah, rah, rah. And I mean, the first thing I can't really skip is, what did they think it was going to accomplish? Just what, you have to sort of have some tactical clue. Well, no, I'm already giving them too much credit. You'd think that a rational human being would think, well, what are we hoping is the outcome of this? We can go rah, 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 and actually a lot of people go and yell at politicians, thinking that's going to do something, and, well, what? What do you think that's going to do? So did any of them think that if they go down and go rah, 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 they're going to go, just kidding, we're going to give Trump 4 more years? And sadly, I think a bunch of them may have actually thought that, because there were a bunch of people that I saw. I mean, I'm sure they're a tiny minority, including a tiny minority of Trump supporters, but there were a bunch of people who were still like, you just wait and see, Trump's going to have a second term, because secretly Pence is going to this, and there's really a that, and there's this going to that, and just no, whatever you think of the election, it's over, it already happened, it had already happened before this, the electors. It's no, there are secret electoral votes that nobody's allowed, and when they get unsealed, just no. But the reason I bring it up, now, I don't give a crap about either politician, and I don't give a crap about the circus and all that. The reason I talk about these things at all, and apparently I need to keep pointing this out, is the mentality of the people is what determines the future. The belief system of the people is what determines how long it's going to take to get to an actually free society. And so when there are a bunch of Trumpites falling for just ridiculous garbage, I don't point it out, and of course, they assume that if I'm making fun of them, that I must support Biden, which is, a sign of their own limited mental capacity, thinking those are the choices. Um, but when I bash the Trumpites, it's because a number of people who imagine themselves to be pro-freedom think those things and do those things and completely waste their time and energy on efforts that are literally designed to put an authoritarian, narcissistic sociopath in a position of control over them and over everybody else. And as long as people play that game, they're not pushing towards freedom. Anybody who supports Trump and thinks they're pushing towards freedom is being willfully dense. Because, I mean, okay, if you believed his sales pitch before 2016, and even his sales pitch didn't bother to try very hard to be about freedom, it was about nationalistic authoritarianism. But even if you wanted to imagine his campaign was pro-freedom, he's been in there 4 years. What did he do? Well, he increased the droning and increased the bombing. And they'll say, well, he didn't start any new wars. Okay, so you only murdered people in a general area where people were already being murdered. Well, then you're a great guy. That's the new test of whether somebody is for freedom and justice, is they only committed terrorism and mass murder in the same general area that the U.S. military has been doing that already and increased it in the process. And you look at all the people who he appointed, and James Corbett did an awesome video, how Trump filled the swamp. He did it years ago, showing who all got into positions of power and showing, of course he's a puppet. Like, he could have actually nominated different people who had different beliefs, but no, he didn't, because he's their puppet and was from day one. And then you get this weird excuse from Trumpites like, oh, they bullied him into it. They didn't let him. So he's this all-powerful, awesome, strong man, alpha male. And then in the next breath, it's, oh, he couldn't do what he wanted because the left bullied him. And But the reason I bring it up is not because Trump matters, because in the long run he doesn't matter in the slightest, but the mentality of the people matter. And so getting to this insurrection, and it was an insurrection. It was a wimpy, very short-lived, utterly pointless insurrection, but it was an insurrection. It was, we're going to barge in without your permission into the Capitol building. Now, I will say it was sort of funny to see, and it's sort of amusing to watch the politicians crapping themselves, although it kind of seems like they let it happen so they could put on the drama of, oh, poor us, we're just doing the process, and look at, we're being victimized and scared by these. I mean, who was there to be scared by? Like, there was almost nothing malicious. I mean, they were irresponsible, vandalist, barging in doofuses, but they weren't like, we're going to come hang them all. I almost would have had more respect for them if they were. They were just like vandals barging in, and they basically behaved more like Antifa rioters, and we're just going to break stuff and yell stuff, and we don't really know what we're doing, and we don't have a plan, and like there's no way this is going to end well for us, but hey, we want to make a big splash and make the news and accomplish nothing. And so what actually happened, like, as totally predictably happened. The government didn't say, golly gee, you can have Trump for 4 more years. They did what they were going to do anyway and went through the pointless ceremonial thing of counting electoral votes and saying, yeah, Biden's the winner. And it was just slowed down a few hours by a weird tantrum. But the people involved, now, if they're instigators, which they totally could be, there may very well be, they know they're not going to get in much trouble. But if any of them were actually genuine, like, yeah, we're going to barge in, break stuff, like the picture of the guy swiping the podium, which is hysterical. Like, it's really funny to watch somebody do that. But do you think that's going to end well for you, dude? Like, there's a camera taking your picture, walking up, like, and the guy's sitting in Pelosi's office, and all the guys just like, look how proud we are without our masks on. Like, maybe this is the one time you probably should have worn a mask for your own protection. Not from a stupid virus, from the fact that you're on 80 million cameras showing you do something that they're totally going to paint as terrorism and treason. Which it was like the wussiest form of terrorism ever, which, that might be a good thing. But they weren't even They weren't trying to do anything. They didn't even have a goal. It wasn't even like, oh, this governor's so horrible, we're going to go in and hang him, or like an actual like insurrection with a point. It was just a tantrum, which put on a big show, and then the show of the counting the votes continued, and then Biden was confirmed. But it's looking at the mentality of a bunch of Trumpites. It's, again, I think there are a tiny minority of Trump supporters, but a lot of them really did believe to a religious blind faith degree that their God Emperor Trump was going to have 4 more years. And I've talked to a bunch of them recently and said, no, he isn't. It's not how the Pence has the power to decide which votes to count. I was like, no. And Pence had to keep explaining to Trump, no, I don't. I can't do that. I'm not going to do that. It's not how it works. Yeah, but this is going to happen. And this is good. The military's to declare martial law and oversee a new election. Like, you have to be really childish and clueless about how any of this works to think that that was ever going to happen. That the whole military is like, yep, now we're just going to go full martial law and have a new election. Like, what would that look like? Okay, now we're going to go visit, 100 million, 150 million people and say, who do you want to vote for? Yeah, this sounds super legitimate. And to pretend, for those people to pretend they give a crap about the Constitution and the rule of law when they're literally cheering for dictatorial martial law and complete totalitarian control. It's like, yeah, but it's for our good. And they don't realize that that's how literally every tyrant gets cheered into power, is pretending to fight the establishment, while usually being the establishment, and saying, if you just give me the power, the authoritarian power, I'll do something. But watching the ridiculous spectacle, again, without even saying how much of it I think was genuine, how much was totally staged, because a lot of it looked pretty damn staged, but a bunch of it, could very well be, at least thousands of the people out front going, rah, we're mad. Like, most of those people, I assume, were genuine, and it was utterly pointless. And so the good news is, yay, they showed the spirit of resistance. They are willing to disobey, but in the dumbest way possible and utterly pointlessly, because the thing they were disobeying is which tyrant is going to be, lording power over us for the next 4 years. So, but if I'm stretching as hard as I can to try to imagine some good news out of this, the more people learn to disobey, the more capable they are of disobeying when it actually matters, which is not bickering over which tyrant there's going to be. But if it's like when April 15th rolls around this year, it's going to be interesting to see how many people say, you political bastards ruined my life. I'm not sending you money. And a lot of people get it withheld anyway, so they'd have to file to get it back. But all the businesses and self-employed people, it'll be interesting to see how many just go, why on earth would I send you money? You destroyed so many people's lives. You killed the economy, and you waste the money on the most either ridiculous or downright evil stuff, just not going along with that anymore. Like, that's a kind of actual civil disobedience that is worthwhile and morally consistent and makes sense and might actually do something. So it'll be interesting to see if any of this rebelliousness actually translates into anything worthwhile. And that's why I have to kind of focus on this. And the funny thing is, I was just working on the script for the Jones Plantation, and Mr. Smith talks about exactly this, that if you give them an outlet, they can release their anger and frustration in a way that has no chance of achieving freedom for them. None at all. It'll wear them out and break them down, and then, okay, good. They'll meekly slink back into line and be good little subjects from then on. And it's true. I want to see how many of those Trumpites who are now drastically disillusioned, including the ones who thought, we're going to go 4 more years. No, you weren't. That wasn't going to happen. And a bunch of them were just, it's scary, the level of delusion. I mean, some people are like, I don't know, anything could happen. Okay, well, if you're not sure, that's fine. But some people were like, so condescending of, oh, I know better. You're going to see. Want to bet $1,000? And I was like, no, I don't want to take money from somebody that mentally challenged. Then, of course, he's going to get 4 more years. And it was scary. And it really was like friggin' Jonestown. It was totally the cult mentality. And the QAnon thing really is a cult. It literally, in every way, is a cult. It has this weird set of mythology, and this one person they're all hoping is going to save the day, and he's secretly going to blah, 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 and blah. No, he isn't. No, he's not. That's not how any of that works. And so it's creepy and scary to watch people's righteous indignation. Because in case anybody doesn't know this about me, in case this is the first time you're hearing from me, if you're complaining about the political left and socialism and communism, good. Those are evil. Those are destructive. Those idiotic, insane philosophies have caused many, many tens of millions of people to lose their lives. It's actually in the hundreds of millions. It's utterly despicable. So if somebody's frustrated with that and angry at that, good. So far, I totally sympathize. But if your response is to cheer for a different authoritarian collectivist, you're not going to do any good. But the people in power are going to be perfectly happy. Trump was never anti-establishment. Trump did exactly what the establishment wanted him to do. Now, he's unstable enough that I think a few of his puppet strings broke. And I don't mean then he acted on principle. I mean, then he's just an out of control, mentally imbalanced, demented puppet saying just random crap. And the people who pull the strings are like, ooh, this is getting kind of embarrassing and weird. But a bunch of it is what they wanted. They wanted the professional wrestling show. They wanted somebody to come in to pretend to be against the establishment. Notice Obama pretended that too. Hope and change. And yeah, bullshit. But you were still too establishment for most people to believe. Also, the people did believe you, and then they find out, nope, you didn't going to change squat. You kept everything that mattered the same and made it all a little bit worse, as happens every single time. So they basically did the professional wrestling version of we're going to do something so outlandish and make the guy so obnoxious that a bunch of people are going to believe he's anti-establishment, even though there's literally no reason to think he is. Like, he's been pro-establishment. He's been kissing the ass of the ruling class forever. He's been buddies. With the Clintons, with all of them, he's a New York liberal. And so people literally have to hallucinate to imagine that he's pro-freedom. Every once in a while, he'll drop some mention of the Constitution, which he doesn't care about crap about. I mean, he's personally advocated the demolition of the First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth, Fifth, Sixth, Ninth, and 10th. At the very least, Trump all by himself has openly shown that he doesn't give a crap about those. And yet people are like, our Constitution, and I don't give a crap about the Constitution. I believe in a free society. The Constitution is an authoritarian document. But when you watch people falling for this crap, and thinking that meant pro-freedom. Now, I'll be mean to myself and a little bit sympathetic. Once upon a time, 1994, I supported Ross Perot back when I was a statist. And looking back now, I can totally see how I projected onto Perot the things I wanted him to be about. Now, he would talk about the status quo is bad and there's corruption and incompetence and all these things. So he said a bunch of things that were actually true, but I wanted to interpret into that he was way more on the same page with me than he actually was, because that's natural. If you're a statist and looking for a leader to save the day, you're going to want to believe in a leader to the point of being just hallucinating crap to hope he's your leader. And anybody still supporting Trump thinking he's pro-freedom is absolutely hallucinating crap. He's had 4 years to actually do something, and he's done nothing. Nothing of any significance, except increase bombing and increase federal spending, and the budget just, through the frickin' roof. So it's just people's wishful thinking, wanting there to be a political savior. That's a very bad sign. When people are like, oh, you bash Trump and Trumpites so often, it's because if you think you're pro-freedom and the way you exhibit how pro-freedom you are is to cheer for a wannabe dictator, authoritarian megalomaniac, that's not good. First of all, it's not a good sign about your mentality. And second, it's not helpful to humanity when the advocates of freedom can be duped into literally cheering for slavery and a police state and martial law and just ridiculous stuff like that. That's the reason I bash it. It's not because, between Trump and Biden, I give a crap about those people. Those are two psychos. What matters is whether other people are willing to follow them and obey them and pay taxes to them and use violence on their behalf and act as their enforcers or their law-abiding taxpayers or any of that. And most Trumpites are 100% statist and have been lying to themselves for 4 frickin' years to try to imagine that they're pro-freedom. The people who barged into the Capitol, the fake ones and the real ones, none of them are pro-freedom. None of them. They're bitching over which jackboot's going to be on their throat. And so you have this weird, bizarre spectacle. Another thing I wanted to mention is that event is utterly trivial. Once again, the media blows things way out of proportion. Yeah, there was some violence. One woman apparently got shot. The details of that are so sketchy, and shot and died. Oh, and they mentioned like 3 other people died of like medical emergencies, which is really damn vague. It probably means like somebody way in the back of the crowd had a heart attack or something, which in a crowd of, it was at least several thousand people there on the 6th. And yeah, in a crowd that big, some people are going to have problems and some of them might die. I know none of the details because they've reported, from what I've seen, they've reported none of the details. So the only one the death actually related to it appears to be the woman who got shot. It looked like she was literally trying to climb through a window and allegedly into the room where Pence was. I don't know if that was actually the case. I don't know anything about that. But she, the reporting is that she got shot and killed. That's really sad. It's sad for so many different reasons. It's sad that she was there at all. It's sad that she thought that was a good idea. And, anything worth her doing, being in that building at all for any reason at that time. And it's, sad that she died for that. And it didn't do any good. And ironically, what it did do is make a bunch of Republicans back off and go, whoa, this is messed up. And a bunch of them said, we're not even going to object to electoral votes anymore, and because this is kind of creepy. And if I was conspiracy minded, I would say there could totally have been a bunch of Republicans who were saying, we've been kissing Trump's ass for so long so that he would, bestow favors upon us while he's still president. But we really need to get out of this because the guy is just an imbalanced twit now. So if we let them put on this show and go, oh my gosh, well, for civility, we're not going to complain, like I could totally see them doing that as just a tactical thing. But the end result is it didn't change anything except a bunch of Republicans are now turning around and going, maybe Trump needs to be removed from office because that was kind of messed up. So one of the things that occurred to me early on in hearing about this, I was off working on somebody's patio. I didn't even know this was happening until the guy said, hey, do you hear what's going on? And then I had a chat with somebody else I know, but I saw none of the footage most of the day because I was actually out doing something productive. But a thing that almost immediately occurred to me, again, this is whether it was genuine or set up or some combination, is Trump's lawyers, whoever he has left, maybe not Giuliani because Giuliani's a demented idiot. If he has any lawyers with a brain cell left, they would immediately be on the phone or running into his office saying, don't say anything that sounds like you support this. Because if you do, the day after you're out of office, you're on trial for treason. Because it is treasonous. Now, I don't believe in treason. I don't believe in the concept of treason. You're a traitor to the ruling class. Well, whoop-de-doo. Good. I'm not at all, in principle, against insurrections or treason or breaking the law. I'm all in favor of moral resistance to immoral aggression, whatever form that takes. Politicians' scribbles have no bearing on it. So when I say treason, I'm not using that as, oh, Trump's a bad person because he committed treason. I don't care. We need more people committing treason against the ruling class. But if you're a president and they can paint it as if you tried to make people violently take over the Capitol to try to throw the election in your favor, that's some serious banana republic lunacy there. And that you could totally be tried for treason for that. And so I'm sure, he must have still, he probably fired anybody with a brain by now. But if there's any lawyers in there with a brain, they'd be right on him and saying, don't sound like you support this unless you want to be tried for treason as soon as you're out of office. And so he made these weird lukewarm, but I still think he, put his foot in his mouth enough that it's going to come back to bite him. May bite him pretty soon because now they're talking about impeachment or having Pence and members of the cabinet remove him under the 25th Amendment, which they can do. I don't really expect that. I don't expect either of those to happen. I also don't give a crap because, there's 13 days left of him in there, and then the next puppet sits on the throne, and they continue on with the authoritarian BS. But it just shows how this is why people, this is why I spent 4 years bashing Trump and bashing the Trumpites, because all you did by supporting that narcissistic bastard was let whatever spirit of resistance and pro-freedom you have in you be completely wasted on something utterly stupid and utterly pointless that accomplished nothing for you, nothing at all. All those supposedly pro-freedom people are like, well, in this case, we have to support Trump. What did you get for it? You got a stupid spectacle. You got an increase in spending. You got an increase in droning and bombing. You got literally the worst federal gun control of my life, single-handedly implemented by Trump, who made several 100,000 Americans into felons with his stupid bump stock ban, which didn't go through Congress. He just wrote a thing telling the lawyers, go define the term machine gun to include a piece of plastic that can be used to make a gun fire that way. Not the gun, just a piece of plastic. So literally he told the lawyers, change the definition of machine gun to include these pieces of plastic. And then several 100,000 Americans became felons, and if they didn't turn it in. And the Trumpites were like, oh, those don't really matter anyway. This is what happens when you fall into the political rut. You make excuses for authoritarian violence and oppression, including literally cheering for martial law. You literally cheered. Some of you literally cheered for martial law, which is where the military goes, we're taking over. We tell everybody what to do. We're in charge. You're like, yeah, that's the way to achieve freedom. How stupid are you? So when I bashed Trump and I bashed the Trumpites for the last 4 years, it wasn't because Biden's great or I like the political left. It was because way more people who imagine themselves to be pro-freedom fell for the Trump bullshit. Most of people who imagine themselves to be pro-freedom were not falling for Biden. Like, some of them voted for him because Trump was so disgusting, but nobody was like, rah, 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 we believe in Biden. He's going to lead us to the promised land. Nobody who believed in freedom thought that. But a bunch of people, the reason I harped on it so hard is because a bunch of people who imagine themselves to be pro-freedom were anti-freedom. Openly, vocally, drastically anti-freedom for the last 4 years, and were too stupid to notice. And that applies to all the people who are just protesting. We want a different authoritarian control freak, megalomaniac, narcissistic bastard on the throne. That's not pro-freedom. There's zero pro-freedom about that. Well, Biden's going to shut up. Shut up. You cheered for something evil. Pointing to something else and going, well, that's worse, doesn't change the fact that you cheered for something evil. You tried to empower someone genuinely corrupt and creepy and obnoxious and evil. You did that. You tried to get him into power. And if your excuse is, yeah, but the other guy, you are your own mirror image. Because guess why Biden people voted for Biden? But the other guy, that's why, they're you. The Biden supporters are you. They supported an evil, corrupt piece of shit because they were scared of the other evil, corrupt piece of shit, and you fell for it. And those of us who are actually principled voluntarists have been explaining this to you for years, and now you have it slapping you in the frickin' face. And at this point, anybody who still supports Trump, you go, well, I think he's better than, like, I don't know if I would ever trust you to comprehend a damn thing having to do with a principle ever again. Like, if you fell for it early on and said, well, maybe this will be the lesser of two evils, okay, you can, like, do your wishful thinking and hope he was going to do some harm to the deep state. But at this point, you have to have your head deep in the sand to not know that Trump is one of them and was the whole time. It was no threat to the deep state. But that's why I bashed it. Because if you can be tricked back into the political circus, you think you believe in freedom, you go rah, rah, rah for individual rights, and you get tricked back into the circus, it doesn't make you badass and alpha and, yeah, I'm supporting a strong man. It makes you a weak, stupid wuss. And I'm sorry, but if you think you're pro-freedom and you're still cheering for Trump, you're a weak, stupid wuss. And I hope you stop being a weak, stupid wuss. Because begging for a different jackboot on your throat makes you a weak, stupid wuss. It has nothing to do with freedom. You accomplished nothing by voting for Trump. Just like the people who voted for Biden to get Trump out accomplished nothing. Yay, we got Trump out. And somebody just as bad in. Like, it doesn't change. It doesn't matter what puppet's on the throne. And so this spectacle was the perfect ending of the ridiculous circus of the Trump era. Is this fake ass, weird, wimpy little insurrection that just perfectly showed that at the end of the day, the only thing most of these people will get up in arms about is trying to empower a narcissistic sociopath. And that's it. Like, what did you do when it came to like authoritarian power grabs? When he made several 100,000 Americans into felons? Did you stand up and resist and say, we're not going along with it? No, you made excuses for it. Most Trumpites made excuses for that just ridiculous act that there's no way in hell you would have let Obama get away with that. Some of you might actually have physically resisted and done a protest and say, we're going to have our bump stocks, and if you try to arrest us, we're going to shoot you. But, our guy is on the throne, so it's okay. We'll make excuses. Like, that's how the game is played. And some of us have been explaining this for decades. Like, I wrote How to Be a Successful Tyrant like 15 freaking years ago, and it exactly describes exactly what the Trump campaign is and what it did and what you fell for. And it's so weird and sad to me that anybody who, was at least sort of exposed to voluntarism and that stuff would backslide into going, well, in this case, I'm going to cheer for this guy. Like, if people just don't know yet and they had, like, all they've ever heard is the normal political spectrum, and they go, well, this isn't quite as bad as that. Like, okay, I understand. I was that. Many years ago, I totally was that. Like, well, this is less horrible than that, so I'm going to cheer for this. And those aren't the people I'm most frothing in the mouth at. It's the people who pretend to believe in freedom. Well, I agree with what you say, but in this case, I'm going to do the exact opposite of it and cheer for an authoritarian control freak to hang on to power so he can oversee the extortion and violent domination of 300 million people I don't know. Yay, you're a useful idiot for the ruling class. And so it's... again, it was sort of entertaining to watch the thing, but it's, the people who are involved, they're not going to like the outcome. They accomplished nothing for themselves. But I just, if I'm trying to be really damn hopeful, it's that not the bozos who broke in and accomplished nothing and smashed some windows and yelled and then wandered around. Hysterical picture where they break inside, but they're all walking between the velvet ropes. I think there's like one or two outside the velvet ropes, but it's just that image sums it all up. Is we're rebels, but we're still stuck inside the status paradigm. We're certainly not going to leave this, but we're so rebellious. Somebody had to make a meme of that. If you haven't seen it, the picture of them inside the Capitol after illegally breaking in and then walking between the velvet ropes. That just sums it up. That sums up Trumpites right there, including the ones that didn't come inside. You're still thinking in the statist mindset, and some of us have been trying to tell you from the beginning, before Trump was even elected, you are being a pawn of the worst people in the world. You're falling for a game that makes you utterly powerless, that wastes your time and energy on something that had zero chance of ever achieving a speck of freedom. And hopefully some people will learn the lesson. Now, over the last 4 years, I have met a number of people who said, well, I had some hope in him, but yeah, this happened. And forget that. Now I'm a voluntarist. So that did happen. And I hope you know, of all the now drastically disillusioned Trumpites who on the 20th have to watch that creepy old predatory pervert puppet take the throne, I hope their disillusionment makes them able to actually let go of their emotional attachment to the political circus and the game and thinking that that game actually can achieve something. But it's a little bit weird that I was just, working on the script where Mr. Smith explains how we want them using their time and energy and using it up playing our game that we made up, that we control. We control the choices, so it doesn't matter who they vote for. And they'll get excited and they'll go rah, rah, rah. And for a minute, they'll feel hopeful, and then their hopes will be dashed and they'll, slink back into line. And writing that when it's like, now I get to see it on TV in between writing it. Thousands and thousands of people demanding a slightly different jackboot on their throats. And some of them like barging in and breaking stuff. And what did you accomplish? And, it's fun to see politicians scared shitless because people broke into their thing. Although that may have been planned and staged. Anyway, whatever. But I just, again, in the long run, the thing that matters isn't politics, it's not legislation, it's not candidates, it's not this party, that party. All that matters is how many people believe in and abide by the concepts of self-ownership and non-aggression and voluntarism and a stateless society and all that stuff. None of you Trump supporters fit in that category. None of you Biden supporters who are like, we have to vote for Biden to get Trump out. None of you fit in that category. None of you are being rational or moral. You're all being played by the worst people in the world. And hopefully this ridiculous spectacle will once again help a lot of new people see that. And I think it will. Like, as discouraging as it is to watch how duped people can be, events like this can help people look at it and go, what the hell was all that? And just, there has to be a better way. There has to be a better solution. And we've been seeing that from all the COVID idiocy and the shutdowns and the mask requirements and stuff. People learning how to say no. Barging into the Capitol and saying, we want a different master. That's not saying no. That's saying yes to being dominated and enslaved. Learn to say no. All right, time for me to get back to work on other stuff. Zippity doo dah.